Today I'm going to be walking you through how to draw all of the lowercase letters with your pointed pen. You're going to need your workbook, some of the tracing paper. I have my pointed pen and holder here, and as well as my walnut ink. So let's jump in. For the letter A, we'll have an upstroke, an O form, and an underturn. So again, upstroke, O form, underturn. Next is a B. This one has a little bit of an entry stroke, which is a little bit new from the basic strokes. And we have an ascending loop. We're going to lift up our pen, and then we're going to do an O form that starts on the left side, and then we're going to do an upstroke. And I'm going to lift up my pen on that upstroke so I don't drag through the ink right there. So again, this one's going to be an upstroke, an ascending loop, and then an O form, and another upstroke. Okay, next is going to be a C. I'm going to move my paper down a little bit. This one is going to have the upstroke and then an O form, but instead of connecting it, we're going to kick the bottom out to the right. So again, an upstroke, O form that's not connected, kick the bottom out to the right, and just make sure that you're getting all the way up to the waistline when we're ending the letters, because that's going to help when we start connecting letters for them to connect better. So a D is going to be an upstroke, an O form, and a downstroke combined with an underturn. So again, upstroke, lift up your pen, O form, and this one's going to have the downstroke and underturn all one stroke. And the last one on this page is the letter E. This one is going to have an upstroke, a small loop that turns into an O form. So really, for this one, the upstroke is going to end a little bit sooner. It's going to end right about where the loop of the E is going to start. Because if we did their upstroke up to here, we're going to just have this little portion that's like sticking out. So this one, it's okay that the upstroke just meets the E there. The letter F is going to have an upstroke, an ascending loop, and a descending loop, and then lift up, and then another upstroke. So F is actually the tallest letter in the alphabet. And it has the ascending loop and descending loop together, and then left up to do the upstroke. For G, it's going to be an upstroke, an O form, and a descending loop with another upstroke. So upstroke, lift up your pen, O form, lift up your pen, descending loop, lift up your pen so you don't drag through the ink, and then an upstroke. H is going to be an upstroke, an ascending loop, and then our first compound curve. So upstroke, ascending loop, and compound curve. Next is I. This one is going to be an upstroke and an underturn, and then we'll dot the I, upstroke, underturn, dot the I. Mine got a little bit curved there. We don't want it to be curved. We want it to be more straight versus curving in. We got two more here. The letter J. We've got an upstroke, a descending loop, and another upstroke, and then we'll dot it. So upstroke, lift up your pen, descending loop, lift up your pen, don't drag through the ink, and another upstroke. The last one on the sheet is a K. We've got an upstroke, an ascending loop, a small O form, and kind of like an underturn. This one is more at a diagonal than the underturn would be, but it's pretty close. So again, upstroke, ascending loop, O form, underturn. Next is the L. This one is going to be our upstroke, an ascending loop, and underturn, all one motion. So upstroke, ascending loop, underturn, all together. Next we have an M. This one is going to be an overturn with an overturn with a compound curve. So overturn, overturn, compound curve. N is going to be very similar. This one's going to be the overturn and the compound curve. Overturn, compound curve. Next is O. This one's going to start with our upstroke, O form starting at the 2 o'clock position, and then a comma dot. So upstroke, O form, comma dot. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the comma dot, but you could add a little more pressure like that one has. Next is a P. This one is going to be an upstroke, a long downstroke, and an O form. And we'll do the upstroke. So upstroke, downstroke, O form, upstroke. The last one is a Q. This one is an upstroke, an O form, a descending loop, and an upstroke. Upstroke, O form, descending loop, upstroke. R is what you call an outlier letter, so it has a stroke in it that's a little bit unique. So we start with an upstroke, and then it's right here, that little motion, and then it turns into an underturn. So it's really this little jog right there that is unique. So upstroke, we're using heavy pressure, and we go into an underturn. And that's an R. The other thing to note about R is that it's coming above the waistline. Proportionately, it has to. Next is S. This is also an outlier. This one's going to be an upstroke. We're going to use heavy pressure to move down and then come back up. And so really, this one is very similar to a cursive S, which would be like this. But over here, we're just extending that and then coming back around that way. So again, it's an upstroke, heavy pressure, and you're coming back around. Next is T. This one's going to be an upstroke, and then again, a downstroke into an underturn, just like the D, and we're going to cross it with what's called a crossbar. When I'm crossing it, I'm going to lift up my pen so it doesn't drag through all that ink. U is going to be, again, an upstroke, an underturn, and an underturn. So upstroke, lift up your pen, underturn, and underturn. And you'll notice on this one, I got a little curved. I think I have a tendency to do that. So we want it to look more like this one, nice and straight. We've got a few more letters. V is going to be a compound curve with a comma dot. So again, a compound curve and a comma dot. W is the compound curve with an underturn with a comma dot. So compound curve, lift up your pen, underturn, lift up your pen, comma dot. X is another one of those outlier letters, and so what's happening with this one is we're going to be cutting off a compound curve. So we're doing a portion of a compound curve, then we're moving up to cross the X. So again, portion of the compound curve, and you're crossing the X, moving up. Next is Y. This one is going to be a compound curve, a descending loop, and an upstroke. So compound curve, descending loop, and upstroke. And the last one is a Z. This one's going to be an overturn, but it's a little more curved, a descending loop that's a little more curved, and an upstroke. This one probably could fit into the outlier letters. We're trying to force it into the basic strokes. So those are all lowercase letters. Just a quick run through. Let me know if you have any questions. If you have certain letters that you want to see again, if you have letters you're struggling with, let me know and I'd love to help you with that.